Welcome to the Lovestead.
Hello, welcome back to Lady Lovestead Reads. My name is Jessica, my pronouns are she, her. This is my weekly vlog. It's Monday, January 23rd. I've had a really good Monday so far. The weather has been so nice. Like, it's been cold but sunny, and like there's been gorgeous frost on the trees in the morning, and like there's snow on the ground. Like, it's absolutely my favorite time of year. It's been so gorgeous out. Yeah, so today I had like a cute little breakfast, like parfait of like yogurt and berries and oats, and then took the dogs for a walk and enjoyed just the beauty that is outside. It's so gorgeous. Been at work. I'm actually on my dinner break at work. And let's talk about what I am currently reading. If you're new here, I have a reading strategy where I usually have an audiobook going, a standard sized physical book that I'm reading, and then a big book of some sort that's like 500 or more pages. So the big book I'm reading is Neverseen by Shannon Messenger. This is book 4 in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. And this is about Sophie, who discovers that she's an elf and she gets whisked away to the Lost Cities, which is like the elfin realm. It is a middle grade high fantasy and I'm loving it. I'm halfway through this book and it's been a great ride so far. Very much enjoying it. I mentioned in my last vlog that my friends who have read this series or attempted it DNF'd this series with this book, so I'm curious to see like where it goes wrong, because so far it hasn't gone wrong for me. So far I'm still really liking it. The way that I've been doing my big book reads, which is really working for me, is every other day I read the big book. So I stay engaged with the big book, but I'm also like not just reading this because big books intimidate me. So one of my goals for this year is to read more 500 or longer page books, and the only way to do that is to do it every other day, because if I like put it down and then go read something else for a while and then pick it back up, I lose my engagement with the story. But I'm finding that by doing every other day, I am staying engaged in the story. So it's really working out for me. Yesterday, I didn't read. Yesterday, I just read my audiobook. I didn't read any of my physical books. So I think today, this evening, I'll pick up whichever one I'm most in the mood for. But the other book that I'm reading is The Silent Girl by Tess Gerritsen. This is book 9 in the Rizzoli and Isles series. So this is actually set in Boston, in Chinatown. And it is the book series that the TV show is based on. I haven't watched the TV show. I don't need to. I'm fine just enjoying the books. This is probably one of my favorite series of all time. Not probably. It is one of my favorite series of all time. I'm halfway through, and what's happened in this is there has been a murder in Chinatown, and everything about it connects back to this mass shooting that happened in the 90s at a restaurant called the Red Phoenix. So Jane, who is the detective, and Maura, who is the forensic pathologist, are opening up that investigation again and re-examining what happened during that shooting. There's mob issues involved. It's just a really good series. Pretty standard police procedural, but what's not standard about it is that Tess Gerritsen is a doctor, and so the forensic pathology in this, the medical stuff in this, is so good and so unique and so much fun, and I just love this series a lot. If I haven't mentioned it already, I really like it. And then in January, I seem to be having a happy little Chinese American moment, because a lot of the books I read have had something to do with Chinese American history or culture, and that was completely on accident, but it's such a happy accident because Chinese New Year was this month. So on audiobook, I'm reading a memoir called Stay True by Hua Su. And I'm only like 10% into this so far, but it is about an immigrant from Taiwan. And, you know, this immigrant's parents are Chinese American and they're Chinese American, and just their experience of all of that. I think they immigrated in the 90s. And 90s or the 70s, I can't remember. 90s might have been front desk. No, this is 70s. This was 70s. So yeah, again, not very far into that one. So far, they've just given some background context of their parents, and that's all we've gotten so far. So that's what I am reading on audiobook. Hi, it's Wednesday. I actually decided to DNF Stay True by Hua Su. I was really bored with it. So he is a columnist for The New Yorker, and I'm wondering if you need to read that column and get to know him through that writing to really appreciate his autobiography, because I was so bored. So I DNF'd it at 34%. And instead picked up Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I read Lord of the Flies in 2022 and really loved it. And I had heard that Wilder Girls is like a sci-fi rewrite of Lord of the Flies, featuring girls instead of boys. And that's sort of accurate. It's less Lord of the Flies and more like a story about a pandemic. So what happens is there's this group of girls on an island, and this pandemic breaks out called the Tox, and they're left on that island to as a form of like containment, to contain it strictly to the island. And so like the Navy in hazmat gear and everything will drop off supplies to them once a week, and they just stay on that island until they die, basically. And there's young girls, and then there's like a group of teachers, and they've all been exposed to this tox. And I guess that the tox affects the environment and animals as well. Like the trees started growing really wild, and the animals got like bigger and wilder and more dangerous. And the girls, like, they're just sick. Like, they're really sick. That's the premise of it, and so far I like it. It's weird. It's definitely a weird time. But yeah, that's what I picked up there. I haven't made any progress whatsoever on The Silent Girl or Neverseen. I just haven't had time this week to sit down and read physically. It's been a really heavy work week. Like, I've literally worked from like 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And sometimes it's like that for me. Not all the time, but sometimes. I'm hoping that after today, I'll have more time to actually sit down and physically read, especially because I'm starting to not feel well again. I actually had to lay down for a bit today. So, that's where we're at with reading. And yeah, I haven't really done much this week, so it might be kind of a short vlog. Meh. Hello, it's Friday. I'm hanging out in my guest bedroom. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with this room. I'm seriously considering making it my library and reading nook, but we will see what happens. I think it's just gonna stay as it is for a while. I haven't filmed much at all this week. I haven't been feeling well, and I went to the doctor last week and they weren't totally sure what was going on. They ran some tests, and then I had a follow-up this week, and it turns out that little Miss Pippi gave me an infection called cat scratch fever. And so what had happened was, back when I had COVID, like the week that I had COVID, I brought Pippi home. And she was like really wild and scratched me a lot her first couple of weeks here. So like as I was recovering from being sick, and cat scratch fever, I guess, takes some time to like fully hook itself into your system. So I was having chills and night sweats and fatigue, and I was nauseous, and then my lymph nodes swelled up. So I honestly thought I had lymphoma. And that's why I went to the doctor and they ran some tests and everything, but the numbers didn't quite match up a lymphoma infection or lymphoma. But thankfully it's just this infection that my dear sweet kitten gave me, and it is treatable with antibiotics, and the antibiotics have shrunk the old lymph nodes. So that's wild. But it also is like validating, because I kept kind of gaslighting myself and being like, ugh, I'm not like throwing up, I don't have a stuffy nose, like I don't have the usual sick symptoms, you know. I just felt still feel like very, very tired, and like had the swollen lymph nodes and things like that. So I was like, I'm probably just working too much, it's probably just this or that or whatever. Basically gaslighting myself and invalidating myself and being like, yeah, it's all in my head, I'm fine, I'm sure. And I'm glad that I did go to the doctor, because I guess that if you let it go too long, cat scratch fever can cause some like bad side effects and stuff. It can get into your brain. Like all kinds of interesting things can occur. So, yeah, cat scratch fever is also pretty rare, but the doctor thinks that since it happened while I had COVID and my immune system was really trashed, that I was lucky enough to pick it up, and I've been basically sick since October. So like my exhaustion that I've been feeling is valid, and that was like really nice. It wasn't just me being lazy or whatever. It was nice to have that validated, and it's like, I guess, just permission to rest. So anyway, we got that figured out this week and got me some meds, and hopefully I'll be back to my normal levels of tired here soon instead of my extra tired levels. I do have a reading update for you. I finished The Silent Girl by Tess Gerritsen, and I gave it 3 stars. I love this. You all know this. Like, I've said it so many times. I love this series. One of my favorite series of all time. I love every book in this series, and I love this book too. But I do think it's one of the weaker books in the series. And interestingly enough, when I go thrift shopping for books and I try to find Tess Gerritsen, this book is always in thrift shops. So I think that overall it's not a very popular one. So I gave this one 3 stars. It's still entertaining, and I still love it because it's the characters and it's Tess Gerritsen, and there's always a lot to love about her work. But the plot is just very vanilla. I don't want to say vanilla. Vanilla is not the right word. The plot is very, just not unique. It's a revenge story, you know, and it just isn't anything special. But there are a couple quotes in here I wanted to share with you. A couple different things that she touched on in this story. This one made me laugh because like the past 6 months have been so drama filled for me. Like just like so full of just like setbacks. So I read this and I was like, hey, quit talking about me. So on page 202 it says, they're talking about a girl who gets kidnapped. And so they're like, no, of course not. That was awful, that shooting in Chinatown. But have you ever noticed the way misfortune seems to target certain people? They'll lose their spouse, their job, and get cancer all in the same year. Stop it. Yeah, I felt called out there. I really am trying not to be a drama queen about what's going on in my life in the past 6 months. But I was like, yeah, that's me right now. It's not always me, but that's me right now. I really liked this discussion here. A lot of what she talks about in this book is like family legacy and how important the stories we tell ourselves about our family are. And so this expert is like assessing a Chinese sword for authenticity to see if it really is from like the Ming Dynasty or whatever. And I'll just read it to you. It's page 226, and it says, "So the sword isn't old. It's certainly well made, and it has the proper heft and balance of a Ming Dynasty saber. But that sword is just a very good reproduction. At most, it's maybe 50 or 75 years old. Why didn't you say any of this while we were there? Because it's clear that she believes it's real. She believes it was passed down from her ancestors. I didn't have the heart to disillusion her, not when it meant so much to her." He looked toward the Peifong gate. It was now late afternoon, and dinner-time visitors were descending on Chinatown, roaming its narrow streets, staring at menus and windows. Dr. Cherry surveyed the crowd with a look of sadness. "At the museum where I work," he said, "I'm often asked to evaluate family heirlooms. People bring in all sorts of junk from their attics, vases and paintings and musical instruments, things that come in with all sorts of mythology attached to them. Almost always my verdict is disappointing for them, because what they bring aren't treasures, but worthless reproductions. It forces people to question everything they were ever told as children. It destroys their personal mythologies, and I hate having to do it. People want to believe they're exceptional. They want to believe their family has a unique story to tell, and for proof they point to Grandma's antique ring or Grandpa's old fiddle. Why force them to hear the brutal truth, which is that most of us are utterly ordinary, and the hand-me-down relics we cherish are almost always fakes." "Mrs. Fang believes she's descended from warrior women," said Frost. "Do you think that's just another family fantasy?" "I think it's something that her parents told her, and they gave her that sword to prove it. So it's not true about General Washi." "Anything's possible, Detective Frost. You could be descended from King Arthur or William the Conqueror. If that's important to you, if it helps you get through your day-to-day life, then go on believing that. Because family mythology has far more meaning to us than the truth. It helps us cope with the sheer insignificance of our lives." Whew! Yeah, isn't that something? It helps us cope with the sheer insignificance of our lives. She's so good. Like, her writing is so good. Even her weaker books are fantastic. So 3 stars for that one. And then I finished on audiobook, I finished Wilder Girls by Rory Power, and gave that one 2 stars. So that one is sort of pitched as a feminist retelling of Lord of the Flies, but it didn't really feel like it said much of anything. Like, in this book, things just happen and then it ends. And I didn't really get a sense of like symbolism or subtext or analogies, you know, like metaphors. It felt very empty to me. It felt like it just didn't say much of anything at all. And like the actual setting and all of that was cool. Like, I really liked the island setting and the survivalism. I liked the sapphic relationship between 2 of the girls, but a sapphic relationship doesn't make it a feminist text, right? So there's that. And I don't know, overall I just was disappointed. It ends without any kind of resolution, but not in a way that leaves you thinking about things. You know, like some books will end without a resolution and you'll still be thinking about it, and it'll still be like a point in and of itself that it's making, like whether it's, you know, being okay with not knowing the truth or having to decide what we believe for ourselves. You know, like there's all kinds of different lessons and messages that can be sent with an open ending that doesn't have a resolution, but this one didn't have that. It just ends. Like, I didn't hate the reading experience, but it just didn't satisfy either. You know what I mean? So 2 stars for that one. When my dog Dinah passed a few years ago, I got this orchid to memorialize her, and it's on its 2nd bloom, and it's just absolutely stunning. It's soft and pink, just like she was. She was a little Maltese. So she was like pure white with a pink belly. And it's just so her essence. like delicate and pink and soft and pretty, and it's so gorgeous. I'm just so happy it's blooming. This is its second bloom, and when I bought it, it had never bloomed before. It was just the plant itself, and I've been able to get it to bloom twice, which makes me a happy plant keeper. How pretty is it though? In other houseplant news, my ZZ plant has these like 4 gigantic new shoots on it. Excuse this mess. This is where I usually keep the birds. I need to vacuum that area there, but 4 big new shoots on the ZZ plant, which is also very exciting for my gardening heart. Whew, it's a cold day. One of the things I'm trying to work on right now is not letting my life just be completely consumed by work and actually taking time to do things that I enjoy. It is Monday, about 5 p.m., and I still have a lot of work ahead of me. Probably be working late into the night tonight. So I decided to take a break for my mental health and get out of the house for a bit. I showed you the orchid that I got for my dog Dinah when she passed with her memorial, and there's a plant I want to get for my father for his memorial, and so I'm gonna go look at a couple different nurseries and see if they have it there. They might not, just because of the time of year. It might not be in season right now, but I figured that'd be a good thing to do that's not work related or connected to any of the other stressors in my life. Something to fill me up a bit and something I enjoy. And so I'm gonna check out a couple nurseries, and then I think whether or not I find this plant that I'm looking for, I think I'm gonna make my dad's favorite meal tonight, which was biscuits and gravy. So stop by the grocery store and pick up some stuff to make that for dinner. And then hopefully after this lifestyle montage that you will see, I'll give you a reading update, because I do have a couple of reading updates for you.
Hello, it's Wednesday, popping in for a quick reading update. On an audiobook, I had picked up the book Dark Horses by Susan Mihalik, and I ended up DNFing it. So this is a literary fiction about a young teenage girl who's training to be an Olympic equestrian, and her father was an Olympic equestrian, and it read to me like trauma porn, because there are all these terrible things happening to the characters, but the discussion of those things were very surface level, and it felt more voyeuristic than it did thoughtful. So I got about 40% of the way through and I DNF'd it. I am making progress in Neverseen by Shannon Messenger. There's a quote here that I wanted to read to you. Sophie is talking to Mr. Forkel about humans' lifespans and how human lifespans are really short in comparison to elven lifespans. The elves in this universe can live for millennia. So they're very, very old and they have a very long lifespan. She's thinking about like how that changes their behavior compared to humans who have such a short time on Earth. So this is page 376. It says, I bet, Della said, still holding her middle. Humans are such temporary creatures. They are indeed, Granite said. I've often pondered what it would be like to live each day knowing you only have 70 or 80 years on this planet. I wonder if that's the real reason they wait those 9 months and begin their timeline at birth, meaning like the birthday. Once their clock starts ticking, there's no turning it back. That was one of the most striking things I noticed during my years living among them, Mr. Forkel agreed. Each generation dumps their problems on the next because they simply do not have enough time to deal with them. I suspect that if they could see a bigger picture, they would not destroy themselves and their planet in the same way. Sophie nodded, remembering some of the thoughts she'd heard growing up. Death truly was humans' constant companion. Maybe if it wasn't, they'd care more about others and take the time to do things the right way. And yet, later that night, as she tossed and turned in bed, nervous for what the first day at Exilium would bring, Sophie couldn't help wondering if the elves' indefinite lifespan hindered them just as much as the humans' fleeting lives. Would the Council and even the Black Swan be still willing to sit back and ignore problems if they couldn't rest so comfortably in the knowledge that they still had centuries and centuries ahead of them? Deep thoughts for a middle school student, right? Really deep thoughts. And I love that she's going there with this, because those are things I was thinking about when I was in middle grade years and age, and it made me kind of a freak among my peers. But, you know, for the middle grade student who is a little bit more philosophical, wow, what an impact that would make, that passage there. And that also makes this book, you know, really appealing for adult readers too. It gives us something to think about and hold on to and chew on in our brains. So I'm up to page 502. So I have about 200 pages left. We're getting there. Still very much enjoying this book. I picked up Jackal for my next physical read by Erin E. Adams, and this is the Full Moon Book Club's pick for January. Thankfully, the live show is not until February 5th or 6th. Today's the 1st, so I've still got some time to read it. This is a thriller, and it's about a woman who has to return back to her hometown for her best friend's wedding. She comes from a really small town. She hated it there. She was like one of the only black girls there, and now she's coming back for this wedding, and at the wedding, her best friend's daughter goes missing. And her best friend's daughter is also black, and she notices that there's this pattern in this town of black girls going missing in the woods. And so that is the premise of this. That's where we're at. I'm not too far into it. I'm 68 pages into it. But so far we've got several tabs already. So on page 16, the narrator is talking about her friendship with her best friend and how it's just one of those friendships where they can be separate for a while and then pick back up right where they started. And I love the way she says this. So she just gets off the phone with her friend and says, I hang up. We don't need to say hello, and we've never said goodbye. This conversation is an extension of the one started in middle school, when we tie up the internet connection talking about boys in the depth of our feelings. No matter what, we can pick back up without ever missing a beat. I definitely have friendships like that. I'm sure you do too, where it just feels like it doesn't matter how much time passes, you get back together and it's exactly the same. And I love that phrase there. It's just an extension of the conversation started in middle school. Such a good way to describe that. When she gets to the town, she's feeling like quite self-conscious about how people are going to judge her now that she's like this big city woman. And on page 31, she says, she's at the wedding, she's interacting with people from high school, and she says, I can feel Lauren giving me a once-over as I smooth out my dress, stretching it over my hips. I expect as much. this is what the weekend is going to be. Lauren, along with anyone else I meet, is going to be checking to see how I've changed. Do I have any visible tattoos? What kind of clothes am I wearing now? All of it fodder for small town gossip later. And boy, is that true. It's one of the reasons I have not gone to my high school reunion, because that's what it's like. Like, the people that stay in the small towns, they're just going to judge you. And I really love the way that this writer is depicting small towns and small town culture and sociology. So on page 41, she gets to the bus stop, and like there's some people at the bus stop, and it says, before I get there, I stumble because I can feel someone watching me. Small town watching is so different from city watching. In the city, it's a quick glance. The person being watched might look back. Here, people will stare, utterly unaware of themselves. That is true. I've spent time in big cities, and the anonymity of city life is just so nice compared to small towns. Like, if you drive down the main street of a small town in Iowa, I guarantee you'll get at least 1 or 2 people that walk out of the building and just stare at you as you drive by because they've clocked you as an outsider. So I'm really enjoying this so far. I'm excited to get more into it, and fingers crossed I finish it in time for the live show. So I did go to the nursery, the plant shop, to pick up a plant to memorialize my dad. And like, the visit was a little bit awkward because one of the people working there was like very chatty and like followed me around and was like just chatting with me. And like wasn't taking any signals that like, hey, I'm doing something kind of important here, leave me alone, you know. And she wasn't taking any hints, and she wanted to show me like drawings that she had done, and it was kind of weird. So I didn't get a whole lot of footage at the nursery, but I did end up getting a plant that I feel like is appropriate for my dad. So my dad is someone who, anytime he had a hobby, he was 110% all in. And he didn't want to baby step into something. Like, he wanted to go all in, full force into anything that he did. And so when it comes to houseplants, I was like, what is a houseplant that someone would see that and think, yeah, they went all in. So I got a Venus Flytrap, and just some little things to set up around it to sort of memorialize that space. So that was a successful shopping trip. I just got home from the barn, and I wanted to give you an update on this audiobook that I'm listening to that is so freaking good. It's called The Ballerinas by Rachel Capelke Dale. And I thought that this was just going to be like a run-of-the-mill thriller, but it is so much more than that. It is so freaking good. Like, it was making me cry while I was scooping horse poopy. And like, it's just so good. Like, there's so much depth to it. Like, it goes well beyond being a standard thriller. Like, I'm actually going to listen to it as I clean up my kitchen and make dinner now, and probably finish it. But it's probably going to be a 5-star read. Oh my gosh, it's so good, y'all. Hello. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the vlog. It is Monday, so we successfully spanned 2 weeks with this reading vlog, and I feel like I read quite a bit. So I was not able to finish Neverseen, and I didn't finish Jackal. So I didn't finish this in time for the live show, but I'll just loop back and watch the recording of the live show. These two will roll over into the next vlog. I did finish The Ballerinas by Rachel Capelke Dale, and it was a 5-star read. That book took me so by surprise. Oh my goodness. Like I said the other day, I thought it was just going to be a standard thriller, but it was so much more than that. If you like ballet, you need to read this book. Like, the depth of this book is just so good. The issues around objectifying women's bodies in the dance world. There's just so much to appreciate about this book. Personal growth and relationships and friendships, and there's just, it blew me away. It blew me away. It really, really did. And it's going to be for sure in my top books of 2023. It just took me by surprise. It's books like that that make reading worth reading to me. Books that just like grab you and pull you in and grab you by the heart and the throat and don't let you go until it's over. And like, I cried, I laughed, I felt so many things, I thought about so many things. Such a good book. Go read it. Why aren't more people talking about it? Go read it, especially if you like ballet. Yeah, and that pretty much does it. I mean, I read quite a bit in this vlog. So I read The Silent Girl by Tess Gerritsen and gave that 3 stars. Wilder Girls by Rory Power and gave that 2 stars. I made my way and made some progress on Neverseen and on Jackal. I DNF'd Dark Horses by Susan Mihalik, and I read The Ballerinas by Rachel Kapelke Dale and gave that 5 stars. So got through quite a lot this week, or the past 2 weeks, like I guess I should say, and in this vlog. Let me know down below if you have read any of these and what your thoughts are on them, or if you're planning to read any of these. If you just want to leave me an emoji to let me know that you're here, leave me the ballerina slippers. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!